I'm going to show you how to install an IPS screen kit into a Game Boy Pocket. Hi, welcome back to the shed. Today is going to be my first attempt at installing an IPS screen into a Game Boy Pocket console. Now, I've installed the IPS kits into a number of consoles now, from the original Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance SP, and they've always produced stunning results. Now, before all the IPS kits came along, there was the option of installing a backlight into your existing LCD, which I became pretty good at doing, but I was always reluctant at doing them with the Game Boy Pocket because the Game Boy Pocket LCD is very fragile. I do have a lot of really nice backlit Game Boy Pockets already, but I really want to try it with the IPS. Also, because those screens were so delicate, there were a lot of casualties along the way, and I do have a few spare motherboards for Game Boy Pockets, so that's what I'm planning to use for this project. I've got a motherboard and I've got this repro shell in the original Game Boy style, which I think is going to really look good with the screen in there, so let's see how that goes. Alright, so tools used for this process: 2 screwdrivers, crosshead one for the 3 screws inside, tri-wing for the 6 screws on the outside of the shell, snips to try and remove the plastic from inside the shell, craft knife, Games Workshop plastic scraping tool, a needle file, paintbrush for just sweeping off all the little bits of plastic, scissors, Kapton tape, masking tape, soft solder, and a soldering iron, soft microfiber cloth. And I think that's pretty much everything you'd need. So this is the kit. I'll keep that inside the bag for now. I've also got a 3D printed bracket to help with the installation. This is the motherboard from one that in the past attempted to do a backlight install on the LCD, and the LCD didn't survive the process, so it'd be nice to revive it. The only thing is I'm not sure if it actually works. So I have a spare Game Boy Pocket. Although it says not working, it just needed the battery contacts cleaning up, and it does in fact work. So what I'm going to do with that is just use the LCD that's in there, swap out the motherboard, try this one in there and see if it works and see if we get sound from the boot up. Now once we've established that this works, we'll put it inside a new shell. I've got one of these which is like an original grey DMG style one. Now it comes with a plastic lens, but I've also bought a glass lens to go with it, so it should be a really nice premium product. Now while we're talking about Game Boy Pocket, one of the issues with the Game Boy Pocket has always been power. It's only powered by 2 AAA batteries, which is fine for powering the original LCD, but as soon as you start drawing more power from it, whether that's with a flash card or whether it's with a backlight, it tends to have issues with stability. So what I might look into is a battery upgrade following on from this mod. We'll see how it goes. My only foray into that in the past was with this. That's an original Pocket LCD with a backlit panel behind it, biverted, which just increases the contrast. And another modification I did on this one was I installed a separate battery. I think it's like a lithium polymer battery or something, but I installed that in there. What I did with that, you can see there's a little connector so you can disconnect it, and I've got a separate USB charger for charging the battery, so you can take it out, charge it, put it back in. What I'm thinking of is some sort of upgrade like that where we can actually charge it through the Game Boy itself, ideally with USB-C, but that is a project for another day. First we're going to see if we can get this screen working. Let's open this one up and try out this motherboard in there. So this is with a tri-wing screwdriver. Take the back off, undo the connection for the screen, because the screen's separate on these, bit like with the Game Boy Color, which is fantastic for this kind of work. We've got 3 crosshead screws inside. Actually, if you look at these two, they are slightly different, but it's still the same console. So pop that out there, get the ribbon, slide it into the connector on here, attach the 2 clips down at the top, either with fingernails or a spudger, depending on if you have fingernails, I guess. Lower the board in place, make sure it's not snagging on anything. I'm not going to bother screwing anything at the moment, I'll just plunk the back on, get my batteries, make sure my volume dial is to maximum. It's weird, you kind of have to scroll it down to turn the volume up on a Game Boy Pocket, and we'll switch on and see if it works. Okay, right, I'm getting nothing on the display there. To be honest, I can use this motherboard, which I know works. Come back and investigate the other one afterwards. I've actually taken the screws out of this shell. It's always better if you've got original Game Boy screws to use those, so they'll be handy. Right, now this is a reproduction shell, of course. Now the advantage of using these is I'm going to be cutting it up and installing like a separate screen. And the original ones of these are getting scarce, so they're probably best left as they are. And using a reproduction one like this, it's no issue with using a new upgraded screen. Now looking at this, it's got like a dent in the ground shield there, which causes this bit to bump up, and there where the cartridge goes in. Now because I'm putting quite an expensive screen in this, I do want it to be good even though it's a repro shell. So I'm going to take this out and replace it with one from an original Game Boy Pocket. better. Where are the buttons? I'm sure I had buttons for this. Aha! Yes! Right, I've scraped a bit of plastic off that button, see if it fits. Yeah, that's fine now. Right, so what I need to do next is cut the inside of this shell to accommodate the new screen. I found a guide on the FunnyPlaying website which shows you where you need to cut. Where the red lines are is where I need to cut, and a little bit of the lamp hole there as well. So I've got that all the way around is getting taken out. Seems to suggest we're keeping this bit there. I think that maybe holds it in, you know, like for the leftmost position. There's a little bit of a bump here, so I think we're taking it level to that bit, and then at the bottom, similar kind of thing here, we're taking out the bump but we're keeping that little bit. So the leftmost bit must keep it in position and all the other bits are going. So yeah, I'm going to use side cutters for this one. I've used a Dremel on the last few, which can get a little bit messy, so we'll see how this goes. These are just plastic flush cutters that I normally use with my 3D printer for cutting supports. With it being a cheap shell, it should be relatively soft plastic to cut. I've used the flush cutters to remove the bulk of the plastic, as you can see there, so it goes all the way around here. We keep that leftmost part just at the top and the bottom, that's where the screen's going to go up against, but I do need to trim this little curve to match up with that point there and there, and I also need to remove like the opening there for the lamp, so that needs to have just a little section cut out of it there, and I think I'm probably going to be best using my knife for that. I'll also use the knife and perhaps my scraper to flatten off these bits afterwards as well. Right, so the knife's taken out the bulk of the plastic. I'm not sure if I've taken enough off here yet, but probably best to take off too little than too much. I can always remove more later. Now I'm just going to use this Games Workshop plastic removal tool to try and level off the other bits. This just sort of scrapes across the surface, so it's a little less harsh than the knife, but it takes longer. And that all feels flat enough, so all I'm going to do now is just clean up my workspace. Let's take a look at the LCD kit I've got. So I've got my bracket, which we'll look at in a moment. Ribbon. Now the LCD comes with sticky tape to hold the screen in place. I'm hoping I might not have to use that, because if I don't have to stick it, it means it'll be easy to pop out if and when I try the battery mod. If the bracket holds everything in place, then I'm alright. Speaking of the bracket, I'll try and figure out where that's supposed to go. I don't even know if it goes horizontally or vertically or what. I have no clue what I'm doing, is the honest answer. Alright, standard Joe. I'm down here thinking, oh yeah, that's where it must fit. But if the screen's going here, you can't have this. Yeah, such an idiot. I'm so sorry. Right, okay. So, thinking about it more sensibly, if I've got my screen in place, like here, right, now the bracket actually fits behind it, of course, so that you can see the screen, and goes at the top here. So the bracket is going to go in place there and just locate it. And it's a little bit of a tight fit just there by the power switch. It will go in and it will lock in place. It sort of bulges up slightly at the power switch, which might make this a little bit stiff. Actually, it seems okay. I think I'll get away with that. And I think that locking it in place is going to be a wise move. So that solves the riddle of this. So I didn't need to cut any excess bits out. Everything seems fine there, and that is going to help locate my screen in place. Probably for the sticky bit, just put a tiny bit down here so that if I need to eventually lift it out, it's only a little bit on that copper area and not on the screen itself. that can go just along this bottom edge here, mainly just to stop it from slipping. Peel this off. I just realised the sticky bit's not going to make a difference there. Take that off. Make sure my screen's correctly located in the gap. Yeah, I didn't need to worry about that slipping. That's all in place there. Looks like it rotates very slightly. It's gripping it on both sides. All seems to be in position okay. I mean, that's the job of the bracket, to locate everything and hold everything securely. So I shall trust it for now and we'll see how it goes. Then I've got my ribbon, which is in the bag here. What we've got is a length of wire, which will come in afterwards, and this little strip, which is to change the display afterwards. Now that should go up here, so there's a little tiny recess, which I suspect is where this bit slots in. Now for the tricky bit of attaching these two, which I always struggle with, so give me a moment. Oh, I've put my fingers on the LCD. Try and avoid doing that, we'll have to clean that up afterwards. At last we're in. Now looking at my bracket, again there's a little recessed bit there, so I suspect that should have gone off first. So get your ribbon in and over, and then the bracket will help locate everything in place. It needs a little pressure at the top near the power switch to lock everything, and just once that's in, to keep everything secure, a tiny bit of Kapton tape just to level this off. Just to keep that in position there. Right, now my buttons go in. And then my motherboard. Now while that's out, it's probably worth giving it a quick clean on the cartridge slot and the speaker. Everything else looks fine. So that is going to go here. And I usually find it easier to bring the ribbon over and attach it before putting the motherboard in place. So I'll do that now. Just saves any excess tension on the ribbon. That goes in there. I think the power switch can drop in afterwards, so that's alright, and this should just locate quite easily now in place. 3 screws that need to go in at the bottom. Everything seems to fit okay. Looks alright at the front. Now as this is the first time these screws are going in, there's no thread in the plastic as yet, so what you're going to do is screw in just so you feel it go, and then you're trying to cut the thread and come back out, so it's like in, out, in, out, in. And you keep going like that, and it will cut a nice neat thread for you without stripping out the plastic. And as soon as it starts to give some resistance, you stop. So that's all in place there. Now this lifts away slightly but will sit flat when the back is on. Everything looks alright. I've got a tiny little bit of plastic in there just from where I was cutting at the edge, but that'll be okay. And of course I've got the bit where my fingers touched that I'll need to clean up afterwards, but we'll get the rest of it sorted and together first. If it all works, then we'll clean it up. Now we've got a little bit of soldering to do next, because we need to power it. That's from this dot to here on number 1 on the power switch, and from this dot here we connect this, so that's basically just gonna solder straight on, and then in there it'll probably be like a slight twist and rotation to get in there. Anyway, we'll get some solder on these 2 points, so I'll need a little flux here, here and here to the wire just for this bit. And my soldering iron is warmed up. Get some soft solder, just break that off. There's a little extra solder to that, just to make life easier. A little bit on here. So you just, like, barely any time at all, you just heat the dot. So I'm going to need a little bit of solder on the ribbon. Here, hold it in place, reheat it. That's attached securely there. My wire attached here, like that. Try not to let the rest of your iron touch any of the plastic parts on the Game Boy. And I'll just hold that and loop it around to this point here. A little bit fiddly, but we're in. And that's it. As far as soldering goes, my switch goes in place up here, obviously in the off position. This should come around and slot into place there. Yeah, it looks like I soldered that in about the best spot. It is trying to lift out a little. I don't want to kink the ribbon and damage it, so hopefully that'll be alright once the back goes on. Speaking of the back, where is it? There we go. That slots in place here. Just check everything closes up alright. Yeah, I think that'll be alright. So I'll start with the screws from the middle. I'll just check that that ribbon's not pinching at the top. Seems to be in place okay. That's not going to cause us any problems. Tri-wing screwdriver again. I'm creating new threads inside these screw posts. in. Let's try that with the batteries. Considering I used the bracket there, it's kind of wonky. It's tilting slightly over that way, which is disappointing. What we want, if it's tilting that way, is it will, when it's flipping over that way, we want it rotating a little bit more towards, maybe I didn't quite cut enough out of there and it needs to move over that way. Oh well, I'll take a look. That's where I had the ribbon slotted in place and soldered, and I got that bit there. If I take out the motherboard and just flip it straight over, we should be fine. I shouldn't be having to desolder anything. We'll just have to see. So crosshead screwdriver next. It was leaning away from there, and I think it needs to just move across that way a little bit. And my screen, so just pop that to one side. I may need to just remove a little bit more from here. Right, let's see if that makes things any better. Yeah, it's still a tight fit near where the power switch is, which again knocks this sideways. You see that that's there, and then it sort of tilts, I think because of this. I'm going to file off a little bit there and see if it helps. Right, okay, so looking at that, maybe that is supposed to sit on top of this rather than underneath it. That would explain a lot. You can see how there's like a little indent there, and there's a slight indent there which suggests it just sits on top. Let's see if that works. No, you see it should work, but it means that this doesn't properly sit flat and locate the screen correctly. Where that's raised up there, I'm just going to remove that section, and I think that should make everything fit much better in place. So what I'm going to do is just use a needle file to take that off. I'm not going to do it here because it'll make a mess all over the place, but just so you know what I'm doing. Right, so that little bit that was causing us the problem I've now taken off with a needle file. I'm just going to do a quick test fit to see if that goes in position okay now. That drops in much more easily and hopefully won't move this across. Right, so now that that's in position, I can see this is lined up okay now. It can't slide up, down, move around, anything like that, so I think we'll be alright. So the issue I was having was at this point where it was pressing against that, it was pulling it round and pushing everything slightly out of skew. Now the screen sits exactly where it should. So fingers crossed that will sort out our issue. Move that out of the way if I can. Because I've already put this together, there should be a thread there, so if I unscrew slightly, I'll feel that pop so I can screw it back in. Covered this in a few of my other videos, but if this is my first of my videos you're watching, they tend to all be this kind of slapdash and disorganised, I'm afraid. But if you are putting screws into plastic, you unscrew slightly first until you feel pop, and then screw them in, and that way you know you are located correctly in the thread and you're not shredding any of that plastic inside there. Should be quite easy for going back together because I've already done all of my soldering and we've actually tested it, so we know that that works. It was just the positioning of the screen that was an issue. There's a slight recess here, so where that was soldered on, from that point I've soldered to point 1 on the switch, and from this point I soldered to my strip. This is for changing the colour palette or something. We'll test it once we're up and running. I'll move my ribbon out of the way so it's not going to get trapped. Should be alright there. And get my power switch in. Everything feels nice and secure. This is promising. I'm feeling a bit more optimistic than I was now. Let's get that closed on there. John. Yay! Right, let's not panic. Battery in the right way there, right way there. Everything's in, and we're on. And that's much straighter. Volume, we've still got sound from our speaker. We'll get our ding. And what was previously our contrast dial should now be brightness, so I can turn brightness up, brightness down, and that works really nicely. And let's see, so where did I put the little touch sensor? There we go. So that's changed to like the yellow colour, green, darker green, so teal, blue, dark blue, purple, violet, pink, so salmon pink, bit more beigey orange. Ooh, I like that kind of negative colour. and then back to our yellowish. Right, so before I put my new screen cover on, I want to get any little bits of dust out of the way, and I want to sort out that annoying fingerprint that I put on before. I've got a very fine microfiber cloth. So annoying that I did that. Try and avoid doing that if you can. I mean, if you put a lamp on an angle, it's easy enough to see. And as for the specks of dust, I've done this before, just with some very low tack. This is washi masking tape, get from Wilko if you're in the UK, and if you're not in the UK, I don't know where you might find it, but any low tack masking tape should be fine. You just sort of tap it on and it'll lift up any little specks of dust or bits of plastic that I've got onto your screen. I've got some bits in the gap there as well, which I'll just tackle with a brush. Obviously extremely gentle when you're doing this, because even a microfiber cloth is very slightly abrasive, so if you rub too hard it will leave marks. All we're trying to do is lift off the grease from the surface from my admittedly greasy fingers. Okay, we're all clear. Let's switch on again. Oh, look at that. So I got this glass screen to match from Deadpan Robot in the UK. Always good. They got me the screen kit as well, which was via Z Labs, another really good UK supplier of Game Boy modding gear. I always find this bit really hard. The way the sticky bit is on makes it kind of difficult to remove the middle bit as well without leaving a mess behind. But as with most things, it's just important to stay patient and not end up throwing it out the window. There we go. Just a last check, my screen's not got anything on it. And drop it in position. Peel off the outer bit. Right, so there we go. So with the lens on, it is very slightly over to the right and very slightly down. So if I end up doing an install with the battery, I'll see how these batteries go, but if I end up upgrading the battery, I will try and move it up and to the left very slightly. So I can change my colour scheme by tapping on the top. I can change my brightness by adjusting the contrast dial. Let's give it a test with a game. So I can swap between my different colour palettes by just tapping like that. Now this actually, to me, looks loads better, and I'll probably use it quite a bit. However, if you do a long press on the top, just hold it for a while, it swaps to a sort of pixelated version, like the retro pixel look, which does look more authentic. It looks more like the original screen. So if we go with the long press, there we go, and that goes to the bolder version. Just get that back to the title screen. So let's try and get that to the green. So there's like clearly loads of colours to cycle between with that, but it looks really nice. And if you want the authentic look, let's try it one more time. When you hold that for a while, it drops into that sort of pixel effect. So yeah, it's good. Happy with that. So there we are. Joe makes another relatively straightforward job look very difficult. Tell you what though, it's turned out good. I love how this looks, and I'm going to go and do some testing. So if you enjoyed that, take a look at my other videos, subscribe if you want to see more of this incompetence, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye. Right, quick addendum to the video. I've just come inside to do some photographing and testing, and the battery life is just comically bad. Like drained within 2 minutes on a fresh set of batteries. And I tried another set of batteries to see if it was the batteries I had. Different type, and same thing happened. So yeah, battery upgrade next on the list. And an addendum to that addendum, I've done a bit more research, and it turns out apparently most people are getting about 3 hours on a set of AAA batteries. So it could be something to do with the power converter, could be with the motherboard on mine. So I'm going to investigate that further and come back with another video all about that too.